2015 proved to be a year way laden with more than a fair share of wonderful, epic open-world games. The year gave us such titles as Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, The Witcher 3, Dragon Age Inquisition and Fallout 4. Amongst this barrage of games that collectively pushed what had already been achieved in the open-world genre further, Mad Max made a somewhat subdued entrance. Although many reviews gave Mad Max favourable scores, it is probably fair to say that the spotlight of attention in the press and by many gamers fell on the aforementioned titles. This is not to say that Mad Max necessarily had all the facets or all of the elements to outshine titles like Metal Gear Solid 5 or The Witcher 3, but Mad Max has done a lot of things very well, and the sum total of all of the parts add up to quite an impressive experience. It can be easily argued, and successfully, that the domain of the post-apocalyptic world belonged to Mad Max long before the Fallout series. To draw similarities, though, between the two is not very productive. Yes, they both use the idea of a world that has fallen apart through a cataclysm created by human hands, but the games have a very different feel. A huge amount of what makes the games feel different, aside from the actual game mechanics and the control mapping, has a lot to do with environmental artistic design and environmental storytelling. It is with the latter that Mad Max shines. The game evokes an incredible visceral environment that absolutely nails the feeling, the look, the nostalgia of the Mad Max films, a hauntingly reminiscent fusion between Mad Max 2 and Mad Max Fury Road. There have been so many times that this reviewer would just stop traversing the epic, barren, desolate but full of detailed landscapes to soak up the atmosphere that all of that graphical information, combined with the sound and minimalist soundtrack, was amply giving. Make no mistake, at times Mad Max is incredibly beautiful to look at. Within this area of the game, detailing is at an incredibly high level, a notable feat given that the stark environment requires a generous helping of imagination and ideas to keep the environment feeling fresh, and not just a copy and paste segment to the last stretch of road, track or desert that you have just nitro boosted through. Every nook and cranny that is explorable, and the majority of it is, on the map, is unique. Although in open world adventures certain themes and ideas are repeated, this doesn't necessarily exclude the ability to vary or change how those themes are presented. Loot locations and major areas to conquer, such as camps, are all uniquely designed and crafted, with some really wonderful ideas and some incredible artistic visions that surely have been brought to life as close to the original concept art as possible. Given the size of the overall map, this is a great accomplishment. The modelling of the various automobiles in the game are excellent, paying great homage to the plethora of different vehicles used in the films. Max's own vehicle eventually becomes fully customizable, allowing you to configure the car in many different ways, from a flimsy speed demon to a supercharged, heavily armoured powerhouse. It is a great feature to be able to visually alter the look of both the car and Max himself. Perhaps this could have been expanded further, but what is there works very well and adds extra incentive to explore as much as possible and accomplish as many in-game goals to unlock more rewards. Max, his main companion, and the other characters that you encounter in the game are all well animated, and their appearance and design is in keeping with the Mad Max universe. In terms of gameplay, Mad Max appears to be heavily influenced by both the work accomplished by Naughty Dog in the Uncharted series and The Last of Us, and the developers Avalanche Studios' own Just Cause series. The controller mapping, the corresponding animations, and the way in which Max navigates the environments from walking, running to combat is very reminiscent of Naughty Dog's systems. This, of course, is hardly a bad thing to have. Other reviewers and players have made reference to the Batman series of games produced by Warner Brothers in collaboration with more than one design studio. They particularly reference that the combat in Mad Max is very similar to that in Batman, and then tend to veer off to say that Mad Max is Batman, set in the world of Mad Max. This almost dismissive line of thought, lazy at best, is, in my opinion, not only unfounded, but unfair. As I pointed out, the combat feels more reminiscent of the Uncharted series than of the more arcade beat-em-up style of the Batman games. As a game concept, Mad Max clearly is more influenced by games like Grand Theft Auto and Just Cause than other types of games. The premise appears to be Grand Theft Auto and Just Cause in the Mad Max universe, but only the premise. That is not what this game is. Two elements of gameplay that Mad Max gets spot on are the driving mechanics and the inclusion of a camera centralizing function. There are two games of this generation, both open world, where these separate elements ruin the game experience of this player. Number 1. Watch Dogs, which was a game that lent very heavily towards the Grand Theft Auto model, had shockingly bad driving mechanics, and that simply ruined a great portion of the game experience, considering how much vehicles were integrated into the overall tapestry of the game. Contrast that with Sleeping Dogs, an oriental take on Grand Theft Auto that had very similar driving mechanics to GTA. Number 2. Infamous Second Son, where the inability to centralize the camera behind the character often left this player completely exasperated, fighting with the camera, trying to position it so that I could actually see what was going on, especially in combat. Mad Max's great driving mechanics and the centralizing camera function, so kudos to the developers for that. That is not to say that the gameplay is always perfect on the PS4. Sometimes there are input slowdowns in combat or in road battles, but they are infrequent enough not to detract greatly from the often brutal, violent and explosive confrontations that Max encounters frequently in such a volatile world. As was noted earlier, there is an influence from The Last of Us here, and that occasionally comes out from the often sparse and minimalist soundtrack in the game. The tonal quality of a minimalistic, haunting music score that was used far more extensively and prominently in The Last of Us can also be heard throughout the game, with unique Aboriginal instrument sounds and original themes. As an aside here, some of the environments that you explore in the game are genuinely quite unnerving, dark and horrific, taking the game to the same dark, drenched atmosphere that The Last of Us was drenched in. It is an incredible contrast to be submerged in that, and then to emerge into the brilliant, sun-filled sky and blazing desert land. Mad Max relies very much on the sounds of the environment, the whistling winds across the landscape, the ferocious howling of the huge electrical storms, the growling of the car's engines, and the blast from the nitro oxide boost. The little sound bites from NPCs are often amusing, and again in keeping with the feel of the films. Where Mad Max falls short is with a more extensive story. Having said that, the voice acting is very strong. On one hand, it could be easy to negatively criticize Mad Max for not having a substantial, notably long story driven by a complex narrative of many interweaving parts. That at times you would really like more character exploration between Max and those he most closely identifies with. On the other hand, that should not come as a surprise to anyone who's actually watched the Mad Max films. Max isn't a New Age man given to blurting out long soliloquies about his emotions or even his past. Often his tale is told through the eyes of others. The films, with perhaps the exception of the first, are heavily reliant on visual storytelling, and for other characters other than Max guiding us through the story. For example, Mad Max Fury Road is an incredible addition to the franchise, and in that film the story is very simplistic. Max is captured, he escapes with the help of Furiosa, who is also escaping with the wives, and he is then inadvertently, as is often the case, caught up in attempting to get them and himself to a certain place. As ever, this turns out to be an illusion, and the true desolation of the planet is brought home to Furiosa. Max, though, in a mix of an attempt at redemption and a mix of having truly nothing left to lose, risks sacrificing himself to help Furiosa reach some form of reconciliation and to find a reason to carry on. Or he organizes the survivors to make a no-holds-barred attempt at regaining control of the place they escaped from. Once that is accomplished, Max, freed from his responsibility, fueled by the last remnants of his crumbling humanity, leaves. The film was mistakenly interpreted as a feminist rendition of Mad Max, without hardly anyone acknowledging that Max is still the central character and is the focus of the beginning of the film and is the focus of the very last scene in the movie. Mad Max, the game, does have a story, albeit that not that long, and there are some very rewarding cutscenes and quirky events in the overall game experience. Mad Max is an incredible, visceral, visually stunning masterclass in environmental storytelling. It is clear that a huge amount of work and dedication went into bringing the barren and stark world of Mad Max to life. Packed with wonderfully crafted locations and interesting ideas, the game is so much more about your own individual journey as you explore the vast open-world map than the relatively brief main story. In a year that so many great open-world titles have emerged, Mad Max can proudly, defiantly, hold up its head to be counted. It has done a wonderful job of bringing the Mad Max universe to life and allowing us the opportunity to immerse ourselves within it.
And you happen